Welcome back to Cooking Gluten and Dairy Free with Dave D. Today on the menu are beef ribs, made in the oven. Now, in a perfect world, we will cook these in a smoker, but since it's only 10 degrees where I live, we gotta get creative and cook it in the oven. But we don't want to sacrifice flavor or tenderness, so we're gonna cook it nice and slow. This recipe is actually pretty easy, but the cooking process does take a long time. But trust me, it's worth it. Beef ribs, oven edition, gluten and dairy free. Let's get down to business. So first things first, we want to go ahead and set our oven to 275 to preheat. Now we're going to make the rub for our ribs. We're going to add about 10 different spices to really level up that flavor. So to a bowl, add some garlic powder, onion powder, brown sugar, paprika, chipotle chili pepper, this will add the smokiness, chili powder, ignore that little spill, salt, a touch of cayenne pepper, adobo, mustard, dried parsley, dried thyme, and some beef bouillon powder. Mix it all in. Now it's the perfect time to mention that the exact list of ingredients is in the description box below. While you're down there, please subscribe if you're interested in seeing more recipes that just so happen to be gluten and dairy free. Also, please hit the thumbs up as it helps with the algorithm and encourages me to keep going. Now let's prep our ribs. Clean them and put them on some foil or a cutting board. Now use some paper towel to make them as dry as possible on both sides. Now, the next important step is to get rid of as much of the membrane on the back of the ribs as possible. If you skip this step, the ribs will be chewy. Now, I have to admit I didn't do the best job here, but do as I say, not as I do. Use a butter knife to get under the membrane and start lifting it from the ribs. Now, grab a paper towel and get a grip of the membrane and try to rip as much of the membrane away as you can. Now, if you mess up like I did, just keep going at it with the paper towel until all the membrane is removed. My ribs had a little extra fat on them, so I'm going to use a knife to trim off that extra fat. When the ribs are to your liking, we're ready to move on. Now we're going to grab some yellow mustard. This will serve as a binder and won't have any impact on flavor. This just allows the seasoning to stick to the ribs. So add some yellow mustard and spread it all over the ribs. When the backside is covered and looks like this, we can go in with our seasoning. I transferred my seasoning to an empty spice bottle with wide opening, but you can also do this by hand. We want to make sure we cover the ribs with a generous amount of seasoning, like you see me doing here. Pat the seasoning into the ribs. Make sure they're well covered. Now flip the ribs to the other side and repeat. Add the mustard, just like you did on the other side, and spread it all over. Again, generously coat the ribs with the seasoning and pat it in. When you're done, they should look like this. Now it's time for another very important step. We need to gift wrap our ribs so they can cook in the oven and tenderize and be juicy. We're going to use 4 pieces of foil that are just wider than the ribs. Place 1 piece of foil in the middle. Lay an additional piece of foil on the top half. Lay another piece of foil on the bottom half so they're just overlapping. Now place the ribs on the foil bony side down. Now fold the bottom half of the foil up tightly against the ribs. Now do the same with the top half. Now fold the sides, making sure they're nice and tight. When the sides are done, place the last piece of foil on top, making sure to crease it around the edges. We're doing this so all the steam stays in the foil, and that is what allows the ribs to tenderize. Now that we have our ribs gift wrapped, place it on a pan and put it in the oven, which is at 275. Set a timer for 3.5 hours. Toward the end of the cook time, when there's about 10 minutes left, let's work on our barbecue sauce. Nothing really fancy here. In a pan on medium, add some butter. Now, I'm using dairy-free butter. When the butter is melted, add your favorite barbecue sauce. This does 2 things. It makes it so you're not adding cold sauce to warm ribs, and it thins the sauce a little bit. Mix the sauce into the butter. When it comes to a gentle boil, turn the heat down to low and keep mixing until the rib timer goes off. Cut the heat. It should look a little something like this. Now it's time to remove the ribs. Take them out and unwrap them from the foil. Don't be alarmed by the color. We aren't done yet. We're going to turn the oven up to 450 and put the ribs back in for about 10 minutes so they get some nice color. So remove the ribs from the foil. I tried to do this by hand, but it was hot and the bones started to fall off, which is definitely a good sign. But use some tongs. Move it onto a plate, get rid of the foil, and then put it back on the pan. Now, use a brush and add as much barbecue sauce as you want. I added it all the way down to the bone. Once you're done, return it to the top rack of the oven for about 10 minutes. Remember, your oven should be at 450. Let it rest for 10 minutes before you start cutting in between the bones. And there you have it, folks. Beef ribs made in the oven. So juicy, so tender, and so flavorful. Please give this recipe a try and let me know what you think down in the comment section. Also, if you have a recipe you want to see in the future, leave that down there as well. Please remember to subscribe, like, leave a comment, in that order, and we'll see you next time.